My name is Meliora. I am a heritage appraiser. On the night of my horrific car accident, LaDonna and Odette abandoned me in the intensive care unit to seize my inheritance. LaDonna's words echoed in my fading mind, telling me I was desperate. Odette simply pulled the hospital curtains shut on my existence. A week later, I opened a sealed file my grandfather left me. The bank manager scanned it and went white. She whispered that I needed to see this. 48 hours later, LaDonna lost everything. If this resonates, tell me below, where are you listening from? And what time is it? Let us begin the story. The sterile smell of antiseptic hangs heavy in the air. The steady beep of the heart monitor is the only sound breaking the silence. Pain is a dull, constant hum beneath heavy layers of medication. I open my eyes to a blinding white hospital ceiling. There are no dramatic tears escaping my throat. There is just a quiet realization that I am still breathing. I slowly turn my head, anticipating the familiar faces of my family. The chair beside my bed does not hold LaDonna. It does not hold Odette. Instead, Meliora is sitting there. She is a social worker, a woman I met years ago during a heritage appraisal for a local charity. Over the years, we became quiet allies. Her hand rests gently on the edge of my white blanket. I try to speak, but my throat is completely dry. Meliora leans in, her eyes warm but deeply concerned. She hands me a small sponge soaked in water, pressing it gently to my cracked lips. The silence in the room is heavy, but it is not the kind of silence that brings peace. It is the kind of silence that tells you everything you need to know about the people who are absent. I manage to whisper a question about their whereabouts, though I already know the answer. Meliora shakes her head slowly, explaining that they were notified but did not come. The truth settles into my bones like winter frost. LaDonna and Odette are doing exactly what they always do. They are prioritizing themselves, but my mind does not linger on their betrayal. It instantly shifts to the one living creature who actually depends on me: Buster. Buster is a 15-year-old rescue retriever. He has severe arthritis in his hind legs and a heart murmur that requires daily medication. He is terrified of loud noises and sudden movements, and right now, he is trapped in the historic Savannah mansion with two women who view him as nothing more than an inconvenient pest. Gripping Meliora's wrist, my fingers are weak, but my resolve is like iron. I remind her that Odette hates him. She threatened to call animal control last month because he shed on her designer rug. He needs his heart medication every single morning. Meliora squeezes my hand in understanding, staring blankly at the wall. I state the absolute reality. They will not feed him. They will not give him his pills. They will use my absence to finally get rid of him. My heart monitor spikes slightly, the only outward betrayal of my internal panic. Buster is the only soul in that massive, echoing house who ever greets me at the door. I cannot let him become collateral damage in their twisted game of convenience. Looking at the clock on the wall, it is 7 a.m, exactly 2 days after the crash. LaDonna and Odette have had 48 hours alone in that house. 48 hours to dispose of the only thing I truly love. I do not ask Meliora for pity. I ask for action. I request a phone and ask her to drive to Savannah. She does not hesitate. The battle had already begun. For 9 years, I paid their bills. That is not an emotional exaggeration. It is a documented financial reality. Lying in that hospital bed, staring at the sterile ceiling, I trace the history of my bank statements in my mind. My job is to evaluate the worth of historical artifacts, grand estates, and forgotten legacies. I look at old things and determine their true value based on evidence. It is ironic, really. I spent my entire career assigning value to objects. while completely ignoring my own worth within my family. The Savannah Mansion is a sprawling, 19th century estate. It features original oak flooring, stained glass windows, and a wraparound porch that looks like something out of a Southern Gothic novel. It is breathtakingly beautiful. It is also a relentless financial black hole. When my grandfather passed away, the house became a shared burden. Or at least, it was supposed to be. LaDonna treats the mansion like a personal luxury hotel. She hosts lavish garden parties, pouring expensive champagne for local socialites, pretending she is the grand matriarch of a wealthy dynasty. Odette uses the sweeping staircases as a backdrop for her failed influencer career, constantly posing with designer handbags she cannot afford. Neither of them knows how much it costs to replace a slate roof tile. Neither of them knows the property tax rate in Chatham County. They do not know because I never let them see the bills. Every month, my paycheck from the appraisal firm went directly into maintaining the facade. I paid for the landscaping so LaDonna could impress her friends. I paid the exorbitant heating bills so Odette would not shiver in her silk pajamas. When the plumbing failed 2 winters ago, I took on 3 extra historical audits just to cover the $10,000 repair cost. I did not complain. I just worked harder. I was the silent gatekeeper. I convinced myself that maintaining the estate was my duty to my grandfather. But in reality, I was just an automated teller machine for 2 women who never once asked if I was tired. I remember coming home late one Tuesday evening, exhausted after a 12-hour site inspection. Walking into the kitchen, I found Odette unboxing a $2,000 pair of shoes. She looked up, annoyed that the front door had creaked. She did not ask how my day was. She just told me the internet bill was overdue and asked why I had not taken care of it yet. I paid the bill that night. I always paid the bill. I thought my financial sacrifice would eventually buy their respect. I thought keeping the roof over their heads would make them see me as an equal. I was wrong. Respect cannot be purchased. And toxic people do not value the resources they drain. They just expect the well to never run dry. Now, the automated teller machine is broken. The machine is lying in a hospital bed with fractured ribs and a bruised spine, and without the cash flowing, they have simply walked away. I only felt total clarity. It is Friday afternoon. The hospital room remains quiet, save for the rhythmic hum of the machinery keeping track of my vitals. Meliora returns from the hallway, her expression tight and unreadable. She pulls up a chair beside my bed and sighs, resting her hands on her knees. She looks at me with a mixture of professional disbelief and deep personal sympathy. She explains that the hospital tried to call LaDonna twice yesterday to update her on my condition. The first time, she sent it to voicemail. The second time, she blocked the number entirely. I process this information without flinching. Blocking the hospital while your daughter is in intensive care is not just medical neglect. It is a deliberate erasure. LaDonna does not want to deal with the inconvenience of my mortality. It would simply ruin her weekend plans. Before I can respond, my personal cell phone buzzes on the bedside table. The paramedics had recovered it from the crash site. The screen is heavily cracked, but it still functions. Meliora hands it to me carefully, swiping the shattered glass. I open the notification. It is an automated security alert from the Savannah Heritage Bank. Someone is attempting to initiate a wire transfer of $45,000 from the estate's emergency maintenance fund. The fund is meant strictly for structural preservation. It requires dual authorization, but the alert indicates that a medical power of attorney document has just been submitted to bypass my signature. My heart rate ticks up on the monitor. They are not just ignoring me. They are actively capitalizing on my absence. LaDonna is standing in a bank right now, using my coma as a logistical loophole to drain the only safety net the house has left. She assumes I am unconscious. perhaps even dying, and her first instinct is to liquidate the emergency cash. Noticing the sudden coldness in my eyes, Meliora asks what is happening. I turn the cracked screen toward her, explaining the fraudulent proxy. Meliora gasps quietly, urging me to call the bank and have the doctors officially declare me conscious and competent. She starts to stand up, but I catch her sleeve. My grip is incredibly weak, but my intention is absolute. I tell her no. Deeply confused, she points out the active theft. My voice remains steady despite the sharp pain in my ribs. If we stop her now, she will just find another way. If she knows I am awake, she will play the concerned mother. She will backtrack and hide her tracks. I want to see exactly how far she is willing to go. I want to see her entire hand. Meliora stares at me for a long moment. She sees the distinct shift in my demeanor. The dutiful daughter is gone. The appraiser is taking over. I am evaluating the situation, gathering data, and preparing to audit my own family. Let the hospital records show I am still unresponsive. I tell her. Let her think she has won. The trap was now set. Lying in the quiet dimness of the recovery room, I finally confront the question that has haunted the periphery of my mind for years. Why did I stay? I am a highly educated woman. I have a lucrative career. I evaluate complex historical estates for a living. I am not ignorant. And yet, for over a decade, I allowed LaDonna and Odette to treat me like an unpaid servant. Psychologists call it learned helplessness. When you are conditioned from early childhood to believe your boundaries do not matter, you simply stop trying to build them. LaDonna was a master architect of my low self-esteem. She never used physical violence. She used something far more insidious. She used constant comparison and conditional approval. Growing up, Odette was the bright, shining star of the household. She was the golden child, charismatic and loud, supposedly destined for great things. I was always described with a completely different set of adjectives: stable, reliable, boring. These words were heavy chains disguised as polite compliments. LaDonna taught me early on that Odette was meant to be loved, while I was meant to be useful. If I wanted a place at the family table, I had to earn it through constant service. I cleaned the kitchen so LaDonna would smile at me. I paid Odette's credit card bills so they would invite me to holiday dinners. I bought my way into their affection, absolutely terrified of the isolation that would surely follow if I ever stopped writing checks. It is a brilliant, vicious cycle. Toxic families do not push their scapegoats away entirely. They keep them just close enough to extract resources, offering tiny breadcrumbs of validation to keep the machine running. I was terrified of being abandoned. I equated my financial utility with my human worth. I genuinely believed that if I stopped paying for the Savannah mansion, I would cease to have a family at all. But the universe has a brutal way of correcting our deepest illusions. I looked down at my bruised hands, resting on the sterile white blanket. I did everything right. I paid the bills. I maintained the facade. I played the role of the reliable, boring workhorse perfectly. And the exact moment I became useless to them, the moment my body broke, and I could no longer sign a check, they discarded me without a single second thought. They did not even bother to visit the intensive care unit. The family I had bankrupted my youth to preserve did not actually exist. It was a mere transaction, and my account was temporarily overdrawn. Understanding this does not break my heart. Strangely, it completely mends it. The profound grief I should be feeling is entirely absent, replaced by a cold, sharp liberation. The lifelong illusion is dead. I no longer have to perform for an audience that actively wants me to fail. The moment the truck hit me, the chains broke. I am no longer the obedient daughter. I am no longer the silent bank. I was finally completely free. It is Tuesday evening, exactly 15 minutes past 6. I am lying in my hospital bed, staring at the second hand of the wall clock. Every tick feels like a hammer against my chest. Meliora left for Savannah 4 hours ago. The drive takes nearly 2 hours each way. I have no way of knowing what is happening inside that mansion. I can only picture Odette pacing the hardwood floors, complaining about the dog hair, while LaDonna sips her evening wine and ignores the world. At 6:30, my cracked phone finally buzzes. It is Meliora. I answer it immediately, my heart pounding against my bruised ribs. She tells me she has him, her voice breathless but triumphant. They are on the highway heading back. I close my eyes, letting out a breath I feel like I have been holding for 2 entire days. I ask if they fought her. Meliora lets out a dry, humorless laugh. Odette practically opened the door and handed her the leash. Meliora wore an official state lanyard and carried a clipboard, claiming to be an animal welfare inspector responding to a noise complaint. Odette did not even ask for a badge. She just rolled her eyes, called the dog a nuisance, and told Meliora to take him. A cold wave of disgust washes over me. 15 years. Buster has guarded that property for 15 years. He slept at the foot of my grandfather's bed until the day the old man passed away. And Odette gave him away to a complete stranger simply because she did not want to vacuum the rug. My voice is thick with a gratitude I cannot fully express as I thank Meliora for saving him. She assures me he is resting his head on her center console and will stay at her apartment as long as necessary. Hanging up the phone. The hospital room feels completely different. The crushing weight of anxiety is gone. For the first time since the crash, I feel a profound sense of control. My grandfather, Timothy, used to tell me that loyalty was the rarest currency on earth. He was a stern, uncompromising man who built the family estate from nothing. He never trusted LaDonna. He always knew her elegance was merely a shallow mask for her endless greed. I remember sitting with him on the wraparound porch just weeks before his heart failed. He had looked out at the sprawling green lawn, his hand resting on Buster's head, warning me that they would try to take it all when he was gone, but greed always leaves a paper trail. He had handed me a small, sealed envelope that day, instructing me to place it in a specific vault at the Savannah Heritage Bank. A vault that could only be opened by my biometric fingerprint. I had forgotten about it for years, too busy paying LaDonna's bills to question the past. Now, his words echo in my mind with absolute clarity. The people who abandoned me in this hospital bed are the same people trying to erase his legacy. But they forgot one crucial detail. I am still here. He was finally safe. Wednesday morning arrives with a heavy gray sky pressing against the hospital window. I am sitting up in bed, the dull ache in my spine masked by a fresh dose of painkillers. Meliora walks into the room carrying a large canvas tote bag. Inside is my work laptop, my secure external hard drive, and a fresh change of clothes she retrieved from my downtown apartment. She sets the bag on the chair and hands me a steaming cup of black tea. Her expression is grim. She has just come from a meeting with the hospital's social services department regarding my emergency contact protocol. Keeping her voice low, Meliora explains what LaDonna actually said. When the hospital administration called to request a medical proxy signature, LaDonna did not just ignore the call. She answered and gave specific instructions. She claimed I was estranged, suffering from severe mental health issues, and instructed them not to call again unless it was to arrange a funeral transfer. A funeral transfer. My mother had officially authorized the hospital to let me die, explicitly demanding not to be bothered until there was a corpse to transport. There are no tears left in my eyes. There is no lingering childhood hope that she might secretly care. Hearing those words is like watching a dead tree finally snap in the wind. It is violent, but it is necessary. Sipping the hot tea, I evaluate the strategy. She is establishing a narrative. If I am mentally unstable and estranged, no one will question it when she liquidates the estate's emergency funds. She is clearing the board. Meliora points out that if the bank believes the power of attorney, LaDonna will drain the accounts by Friday. Pulling the canvas tote bag onto my lap, I tell Meliora that we will let her. Confusion flashes across Meliora's face as she reminds me about the $45,000. My entire profession revolves around tracking the depreciation of assets and the historical movement of wealth. $45,000 is a petty theft. It is a desperate grab by someone who thinks nobody is watching. Powering on the machine. The screen illuminates my face with a cold, blue light. If LaDonna wants to play a game of financial erasure, she has chosen the wrong opponent. I have paid the taxes, the insurance, and the maintenance on that mansion for 9 long years. I know every single account number. I know every routing code. I am going to let her steal the emergency fund because I need to see exactly where she sends it. I ask Meliora for a secure internet connection and total silence. The audit had officially begun. It is late Wednesday night. The hospital ward is completely silent, save for the soft squeak of a nurse's shoes down the hallway. The glow of my laptop screen is the only light in the room. I have bypassed the hospital's public network, connecting through a secure encrypted mobile hotspot. For the past 6 hours, I have been buried in the digital archives of the Savannah estate. My grandfather left behind a massive, complicated portfolio. As the sole financial caretaker for the past 9 years, I have access to the master ledgers. I always focused on paying the incoming invoices. I never had the time or the suspicion to look backward. Until tonight. Pulling up the transaction history for the estate's secondary preservation fund, I start filtering the data year by year, looking for anomalies. It does not take long to find them. 9 years ago, a recurring wire transfer began. Every quarter, exactly $8,500 was moved out of the preservation fund and deposited into an account belonging to an entity named Horizon Holdings. The memo lines were always beautifully mundane, citing architectural consultations and masonry surveys. Typing the company name into the state registry database reveals a shell company registered in Delaware, notoriously designed to obscure true ownership. But no financial structure is perfectly opaque. Cross-referencing the registered agent's address with property tax records, I find a match. The address belongs to a small, unassuming accounting firm in downtown Savannah, the same accounting firm LaDonna recommended to my grandfather shortly before his death. Exporting the ledgers into a massive spreadsheet, I run a macro to calculate the total sum funneled out over the past decade. When the final number appears at the bottom of the column, the breath catches in my throat. $350,000. LaDonna has not just been living rent-free and throwing lavish parties. She has been systematically bleeding the estate dry, siphoning a small fortune into a ghost account while I worked myself to the bone to keep the lights on. She watched me cancel my own vacations to pay for plumbing repairs, knowing full well she had $250,000 hidden away. Sitting back against the hospital pillows, the sheer audacity of it is breathtaking. She is not just a neglectful mother, she is a calculated embezzler. But a shell company requires a manager. Someone had to set it up. Someone had to be cashing those quarterly checks. LaDonna is cunning, but she is far too lazy to manage corporate tax filings on her own. She had help. Initiating a deep web public record search on the Delaware registry, I look for the original incorporation documents. I need a signature. I need a name. The numbers did not lie. 1 month has passed since the crash. The calendar on the wall of my small rented physical therapy room marks the slow, agonizing passage of time. I am no longer in the hospital. Meliora graciously converted the guest room of her apartment into a recovery space for me, complete with a rented hospital bed. Physical therapy is a brutal, humiliating process. Every morning at 8 o'clock, I grip the parallel wooden bars in the clinic and force my legs to move. My fractured femur is held together by titanium pins. The pain is a sharp, blinding fire that shoots up my spine with every step. But complaining is entirely useless. I channel every ounce of physical agony into my absolute focus on the end goal. I am learning to walk again. But more importantly, I am learning to walk away. During this entire month, LaDonna has reached out exactly once. She sent a text message 2 weeks ago. It did not ask if I was alive. It simply asked for the administrative password because the internet router was flashing red. I did not reply. I let her sit in the dark. Every afternoon, when the physical therapy is over and Buster is asleep at my feet, I return to my laptop. The investigation into the shell company has consumed my recovery. Tracing Delaware entities is notoriously difficult, but greed always creates a weak link. Whoever was managing the money eventually had to move it into a personal account to spend it. I finally found the weak link on a Tuesday afternoon. By tracking the digital footprint associated with the annual state franchise tax payments, I located an address. The payments were consistently made from a residential network in a wealthy suburb of Atlanta. I pulled the property records for that address. The house is owned by a man named Joel Vance. Joel is LaDonna's longtime financial advisor and close personal friend. He has been hovering around our family for 25 years, always present at holiday dinners, always pouring LaDonna's wine, always offering unsolicited advice about my career choices. He played the role of the charming, harmless family friend perfectly. Opening a secondary monitor, I pull up Joel's financial background. He drives a luxury sports car and takes biannual trips to Europe, yet he has no visible, legitimate client roster that could support his lavish lifestyle. The puzzle pieces snap together with sickening clarity. LaDonna has been using my grandfather's estate to fund a secret life with her lover for an entire decade. They used me as the blind, obedient shield to protect their theft. Staring at Joel's smiling face on his professional networking profile, the reality of their arrogance is glaring. They thought they were untouchable. They thought the boring but reliable daughter would never dare to look behind the curtain. Joel had taken it all. The discovery of Joel Vance's involvement is a massive revelation, but my analytical mind refuses to stop there. When an appraiser finds a forgery, they do not just identify the fake signature, they examine the canvas, the paint, and the frame until the entire scope of the fraud is understood. Sitting in the quiet dimness of the guest room, I begin to map out the timeline. Joel has been in the picture for 25 years. He appeared in LaDonna's life shortly before my grandfather's health began to decline. I look closely at the dates. 25 years ago. Odette is 24 years old. The thought strikes me like a physical blow. My hands leave the keyboard. The silence in the room is absolute, broken only by the soft, rhythmic breathing of Buster sleeping on the rug, pulling up Odette's public social media profiles. I study her. She is a striking girl, with bright blonde hair and sharp, narrow features. I compare her to a photograph of my late father, a man with dark, curling hair and a broad, gentle face. I have his eyes. I have his build. Odette looks absolutely nothing like him. But physical resemblance is circumstantial. I need documentation, logging into the secure portal of our family's primary care physician, using the emergency administrative access I established years ago. I pull up the family medical history. My father's side of the family carries a very specific, dominant genetic marker for a mild blood disorder. It is highly hereditary. I have it. My father had it. My grandfather had it. Opening Odette's medical file. I review her comprehensive blood panels from a minor surgery she had 3 years ago. The marker is completely absent. Her blood profile does not share a single unique characteristic with our paternal line. Furthermore, her file lists a rare allergy to a specific class of antibiotics. Switching tabs. I search Joel Vance's public court records. Pulling a lawsuit he filed against a restaurant 5 years ago. In the filings, his lawyer specifically cited his severe allergy to that exact same class of antibiotics. Leaning back in my chair, the betrayal transcends simple anger. LaDonna did not just steal money, she stole an entire lineage. She allowed my father to raise a child that belonged to the man she was secretly sleeping with. She allowed my grandfather to funnel his wealth into a girl who shared none of his blood. And Odette? Does she know, looking at her extravagant lifestyle, funded entirely by Joel's embezzled money? I realize it does not matter if she knows the biological truth. She is an active participant in the greed. She shut the curtains on my hospital bed without a second thought. Blood, money, and loyalty, every single pillar of the Savannah mansion was built on a foundation of absolute lies. The entire family was fake. It is early Thursday morning. The golden light of the sunrise is just beginning to filter through the blinds. I am already awake, reviewing the downloaded financial ledgers, when Meliora knocks softly on the doorframe. She is holding her tablet, and her expression is completely drained of color. She walks over and places the screen directly on my lap. It is a premium real estate listing on a luxury property website. The main photograph features the sprawling front porch of the Savannah mansion. The asking price is listed at a staggering $3.2 million. Scrolling through the gallery of images, it is clear they were taken within the last 48 hours. The house looks immaculate, staged with fresh flowers and polished silver. In one of the background mirrors, I catch a blurry reflection of Odette holding a designer coffee cup, watching the photographer work. LaDonna did not just drain the $45,000 emergency fund, she used that stolen money to hire a top-tier staging company and a fast-track real estate broker. She is attempting to liquidate the entire legacy. Meliora asks how this is legally possible, her voice trembling with profound anger, noting that the deed is not in LaDonna's name. Tapping the agent's contact details, I keep my voice entirely level. She used the same forged medical power of attorney she used at the bank. She told the brokerage firm that I am in a permanent vegetative state. She likely claimed that selling the estate is necessary to cover my exorbitant medical care. It paints her as a tragic, devoted mother, making a heartbreaking sacrifice. Meliora stares at me, horrified by the sheer audacity of the lie. LaDonna is using my supposed impending death as the ultimate marketing tool. She is racing against time, hoping to close a cash sale and transfer the millions into Joel's offshore accounts before I ever wake up to contest it. Looking at the bottom of the digital listing, the text is bolded and highlighted in bright red. An exclusive open house event is scheduled for this Friday at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Serious buyers only. LaDonna plans to walk through the halls of my grandfather's house, pouring champagne for wealthy investors, playing the role of the grieving matriarch while silently counting the millions she is about to steal. She assumes I am safely strapped to a hospital bed. Entirely unaware, she assumes my silence equals my complete surrender. Closing the tablet, I hand it back to Meliora. Panic is not a metric I factor into my evaluations. I only feel the cold, sharp precision of an auditor preparing a final report. LaDonna has overplayed her hand. The countdown had officially begun. Friday morning arrives with a crisp, clear sky. It has been exactly 5 weeks since the screeching tires and the crushing impact of the accident. For the first time since leaving the intensive care unit, I do not reach for the aluminum walker beside my bed. Instead, I pick up the solid oak cane Meliora bought for me. Standing up slowly, I let my weight settle onto my healing leg. The titanium pins in my femur throb with a dull, persistent ache, but my balance holds. Walking out of the guest room and into the small kitchen, Meliora is standing by the stove, pouring dark roast coffee. Buster is lying on the woven rug, his tail giving a soft, rhythmic thump against the floor. Lowering myself into the wooden chair, I feel a profound sense of peace. It is the deep, quiet stillness that always precedes a massive storm. If you are ready to see LaDonna's web of lies completely unravel today, drop a heart in the comments and let me know you are still with me. Meliora slides a ceramic mug across the table, noting that I look different today. Her eyes trace the new, hardened lines of my posture. Taking a slow sip of the bitter coffee, I agree. For 28 years, I was the reliable workhorse. I maintained the roof. I paid the property taxes. I kept the lights on so LaDonna and Odette could pretend they were royalty. I let them convince me that my only value was my utility. Reaching down, I gently stroke Buster's graying ears. He leans his heavy head against my knee, letting out a contented sigh. Today, I stop being useful. After breakfast, I return to my room and pack a single, black leather briefcase. It is the same briefcase I use when I present historical appraisal audits to elite corporate clients. I carefully slide the printed ledgers inside. I add the digital footprint documentation linking Joel to the offshore shell company. Every piece of paper is meticulously organized, tabbed, and highlighted. I am not walking into that mansion to have an emotional argument. I am walking in to deliver a financial execution. Dressing in a tailored, charcoal gray suit, the heavy fabric hides the bulky medical braces strapped beneath my clothes, pulling my hair back into a severe, professional knot. I look in the mirror. I do not see the neglected daughter who bled on the hospital sheets. I see the sole protector of Timothy's legacy. Gripping the heavy briefcase and the oak cane, I am ready to return to the city of Savannah. I am ready to reclaim the house that was built on my grandfather's sweat and maintained by my silent endurance. I was ready for war. It is 10 o'clock on Tuesday morning when Meliora parks her car in front of the Savannah Heritage Bank. The building is a massive, limestone structure with towering columns, looking more like a fortress than a financial institution. This is not the local retail branch where LaDonna submitted her fraudulent medical proxy. This is the Central Wealth Management Hub, where the oldest families in the county secure their most private assets. Stepping out of the car, I lean heavily on my cane. Buster stays in the back seat with Meliora, watching me through the tinted window. I walk through the heavy glass doors and approach the main reception desk. The lobby is hushed, filled with the scent of expensive leather and polished marble. Handing the receptionist my state identification card, I state that I have a scheduled appointment with the vault manager. She types my name into her terminal. Her eyes widen slightly, and she immediately picks up her desk phone, dialing a private extension. Less than a minute later, a tall, distinguished woman in a navy suit hurries out from a set of frosted glass doors. It is the senior vault manager. She recognizes me instantly, having worked closely with my grandfather for over a decade. Her professional composure slips into genuine shock as she whispers my name. She explains that LaDonna submitted documents stating I was in a permanent coma, leading them to believe I was entirely incapacitated. Offering a polite but distant smile, I clarify that LaDonna was misinformed. I request access to Vault 704, the one established by Timothy. The manager swallows hard, nodding quickly. She leads me past the public teller stations, down a private elevator, and into the subterranean level of the bank. The air down here is cool and completely sterile. Walking down a long corridor lined with polished steel boxes, we stop at a heavy, reinforced door at the very end of the hall. Stepping aside, the manager remarks that my grandfather was a brilliant man. He explicitly instructed them that this vault could never be opened with a physical key or a standard signature, fully aware that signatures could be forged. She gestures to a small, illuminated biometric scanner mounted on the wall. Stepping forward and shifting my weight onto my cane, I look at the glowing green glass. This is the exact moment my grandfather prepared for. He knew LaDonna's greed was a bottomless pit. He knew she would eventually try to strip me of everything. He built a fortress that her lies could never penetrate. Raising my right hand, my fingers are still slightly bruised from the steering wheel impact, but they are steady. I press my thumb firmly against the glass scanner. A red laser sweeps across my skin, reading the unique ridges of my biometric signature. The machine emits a soft beep. A series of heavy mechanical locks disengage deep within the wall. The steel door swung open. The interior of the vault is small, illuminated by a single, motion-activated overhead light. There are no stacks of gold bars or bundles of cash. There is only a single, heavy steel lockbox resting on a velvet-lined shelf. The bank manager steps outside, closing the heavy door behind her to afford me complete privacy. The silence in the small room is absolute. Opening the lockbox, I find a thick stack of legal documents bound by a heavy wax seal, alongside a smaller, yellow manila envelope. Breaking the wax seal first, I read the title, The Timothy Irrevocable Preservation Trust. Scanning the intricately structured clauses, the magnitude of his planning becomes clear. My grandfather did not just leave me the house. He transferred the deed, the surrounding 200 acres, and a liquid portfolio of $2.8 million entirely into this trust. Furthermore, he named me as the sole, unremovable trustee. LaDonna was not mentioned a single time. She was completely and legally bypassed. The mansion she is currently trying to sell does not belong to her. It does not even technically belong to me. It belongs to the trust, an entity she cannot touch, sue, or liquidate. Setting the trust document aside, I pick up the yellow manila envelope. The handwriting on the front is unmistakable. My grandfather's sharp, slanted script reads, "For Meliora, only when the truth is required." Tearing the envelope open, I pull out a single sheet of paper featuring the letterhead of a private genetics laboratory in Boston. The date is stamped 25 years ago. It is a comprehensive DNA paternity analysis. The subjects listed are Timothy, the paternal grandfather, and Odette, the newborn granddaughter. Tracing my finger down to the final conclusion printed at the bottom of the page, the result is definitive. Probability of biological relationship 0%. My breath catches in my throat, leaning heavily against the cold steel wall of the vault. I process the weight of the document. I had used my analytical skills and medical records to deduce that Joel was Odette's real father, but I had assumed it was a secret LaDonna had successfully hidden from everyone. I was wrong. My grandfather knew. He tested the child the moment she was born. He knew that LaDonna had brought another man's daughter into his house, parading her around as the golden child of his legacy. He knew LaDonna was lying to his son. But instead of tearing the family apart with a massive public scandal, he chose a much colder, much more permanent form of retaliation. He smiled at LaDonna at the dinner table. He bought Odette expensive birthday gifts. He played the role of the oblivious old patriarch flawlessly for 2 decades, all while secretly constructing a financial guillotine, locking it inside a steel vault. and handing the only key to me. He did not leave me a burden. He left me a loaded weapon. He knew everything all along. It is Wednesday afternoon. I am sitting in the polished oak boardroom of the Savannah Heritage Bank. Across the table sits Caleb Penhaligon, the bank's senior trust attorney. He is a man in his late 60s, with silver hair and a demeanor as sharp and unforgiving as broken glass. He was my grandfather's personal lawyer, the architect of the irrevocable trust. Caleb finishes reading the fraudulent medical power of attorney that LaDonna submitted to the brokerage firm. Placing it on the table, he lets out a dry, contemptuous laugh, tapping his expensive fountain pen against the forged document. Caleb notes that it is a fascinating piece of fiction, but LaDonna clearly does not understand the fundamental mechanics of wealth protection. She is operating under the assumption that property follows the person. Leaning forward, I rest my hands on the leather binder containing the real trust, asking Caleb to explain exactly how her trap fails. Adjusting his glasses, Caleb details the legal barricade. An irrevocable trust is not a bank account. It is a completely separate legal entity. When the deed of the Savannah mansion and the $2.8 million were transferred into this trust, those assets ceased to be personal property, even if I were in a coma or legally declared brain dead. LaDonna's power of attorney only gives her control over my personal assets, like a checking account or a vehicle. Pointing to the heavy wax-sealed document, he clarifies that she cannot sell the mansion because I do not personally own it. The trust owns it. And the documents explicitly state that in the event of my medical incapacitation, control defaults to a corporate fiduciary committee at the bank, not next of kin. If you love seeing justice served through airtight paperwork rather than pointless screaming, hit the like button right now. Documents do not lie, I state calmly, feeling a deep, intellectual satisfaction settle into my bones. And they do not bleed. Caleb smiles thinly. LaDonna signed a listing agreement with a commercial real estate broker to sell an asset she has zero legal right to convey. That is textbook wire fraud and real estate fraud. By attempting to execute this sale across state financial lines, she has elevated her petty theft to a federal crime. We spend the next 2 hours drafting the ironclad blueprint. Caleb prepares an emergency legal injunction to halt the sale, though we agree not to file it until the absolute last possible second. We compile the forensic accounting of Joel's offshore accounts and package the forged medical documents. Everything is digitized, duplicated, and placed into my black leather briefcase. I am not going to stop the open house before it starts. I am going to let LaDonna fill that mansion with wealthy buyers, real estate agents, and local socialites. I am going to let her stand at the pinnacle of her grand illusion. The trap was fully set. It is exactly 3 o'clock on Friday afternoon. The heavy mahogany front doors of the Savannah mansion are propped wide open, welcoming the warm southern breeze. Stepping out of the rented town car, my tailored charcoal gray suit feels like armor. I lean heavily on my solid oak cane. Buster walks steadily by my side on a short leather leash, ascending the sweeping front steps. The rhythmic tap of my cane against the stone is completely masked by the sound of classical music drifting from the grand hallway. If you are ready for LaDonna's grand illusion to shatter, type karma in the comments right now. Stepping into the foyer, the staging immediately registers as desperate. The house looks immaculate, stripped of its rich history to resemble a generic luxury catalog. In the center of the grand living room stands LaDonna, wearing a pristine white designer dress. She laughs brightly while pouring vintage champagne for a well-dressed older couple, the prospective buyers. Joel stands right beside her, offering a plate of expensive hors d'oeuvres, flawlessly playing the role of the devoted family patriarch. Odette poses near the fireplace, likely filming the exclusive event for her non-existent followers. Yelling to announce my presence is unnecessary. The sharp tap of my oak cane against the original hardwood floor does the work for me. LaDonna turns around with a rehearsed, dazzling smile that freezes instantly. The crystal champagne flute slips from her fingers, shattering into dozens of glittering pieces on the floor. The prospective buyer looks confused, glancing between LaDonna's horrified face and my calm, steady posture, asking if everything is all right. LaDonna's mouth opens, but no sound comes out. She is staring at a ghost. She had told these people I was strapped to a ventilator, entirely brain dead, and that selling this house was her tragic, maternal burden. Stepping carefully around the broken glass, I do not look at LaDonna. I look directly at the wealthy couple. Reaching into my jacket pocket, I hand the gentleman my professional appraiser card, apologizing for the interruption in a perfectly level tone. I introduce myself as the sole trustee of the estate. I inform them that the woman pouring their champagne does not have the legal authority to sell the property. LaDonna finally finds her voice, shrill and trembling with sudden panic. She shouts for me to get out, claiming I am deeply unwell and confused, frantically trying to herd the buyers away. Ignoring her entirely, I place my black leather briefcase on the grand dining table, opening the clasps with a sharp click. I pull out the heavy, wax-sealed copy of the irrevocable trust and slide it across the polished wood toward the buyers. Explaining smoothly that the property belongs to a trust established by Timothy, I state that I am the only authorized signatory. If they sign a purchase agreement with her today, they will be participating in federal real estate fraud. The buyer reads the first page of the trust. His face turns red with immediate fury, dropping the document. He grabs his wife's arm and glares at LaDonna, snarling that she is completely insane for lying about a life support situation, before storming out of the front door. LaDonna turns to me, her chest heaving. Her hands were visibly shaking. Screaming that I am an ungrateful, selfish girl, LaDonna's elegant facade is entirely stripped away. She insists she has a medical power of attorney, correcting her with the clinical tone of a surgeon reading a chart. I clarify that she has a forged document used to steal $45,000 from the Emergency Maintenance Fund. Joel steps forward, puffing out his chest, attempting physical intimidation. He warns me that I am making a massive mistake and threatens to call the police if I do not leave the house immediately. Looking at Joel, the man I had politely tolerated at our dinner table for 25 years, I pull the second stack of papers from my briefcase. I drop the thick financial ledger onto the table, right next to the trust. I softly agree that he should definitely call the police. They will be highly interested in Horizon Holdings. They will want to know exactly how $350,000 of estate money found its way into his offshore accounts over the past decade. Joel stops dead in his tracks. All the color drains from his face, leaving him looking pale and suddenly very old. The threat of physical intimidation evaporates instantly when faced with undeniable, documented federal tax fraud. Odette, standing frozen by the fireplace, finally speaks up, genuinely confused about the money being discussed. Turning my gaze to Odette, I see a spoiled child suddenly realizing the automated teller machine has been permanently unplugged. Reaching into the briefcase one last time, I pull out the yellow manila envelope, the final weapon my grandfather left behind. Sliding the envelope toward Odette, I explain that we are talking about the money Joel was paid to keep quiet, the money my grandfather paid to maintain the illusion. Odette hesitates, then slowly opens the envelope, pulling out the Boston Genetics Laboratory report. Her eyes scan the page, her lips moving silently as she processes the names. Timothy. Odette. 0% biological probability. The absolute truth fills the quiet room as I state that she does not carry the genetic markers of this family. She shares Joel's specific antibiotic allergies. She does not belong to my father. My grandfather knew the truth the day she was born, and he documented it. LaDonna lets out a strangled, breathless gasp, falling back into one of the dining chairs. The carefully constructed web of lies she had spun for nearly 3 decades has just been completely obliterated in less than 5 minutes. She did not just lose the millions she was trying to steal. She has lost her reputation, her secret lover, and her golden child's absolute devotion. Odette drops the paper as if it is on fire. She looks at Joel, then at LaDonna, her face twisting in utter disgust. The absolute silence in the grand hall is heavier than any screaming match could ever be. I do not feel pity for them. I only feel the cold, refreshing clarity of a perfectly executed audit. The golden child was fake. The crushing reality of the situation settles over the room. But Joel is a career parasite. Parasites do not let go of their host without a desperate, vicious fight, sweating profusely. He pulls his mobile phone from his jacket pocket. His hands are trembling as he dials a number, quickly putting the phone on speaker mode and slamming it onto the dining table. Sneering, his voice cracking with panic. Joel announces he is calling his attorney. He accuses me of being a mentally unstable woman recovering from severe head trauma, claiming I have no legal standing. A sharp, aggressive voice barks from the phone speaker. It is Joel's private lawyer, a man known for finding dirty legal loopholes for wealthy clients. The lawyer's voice echoes in the quiet room, stating the situation is ridiculous. He tells Joel that because LaDonna holds a certified medical proxy, they have the right to declare me mentally unfit and have me removed from the premises. He threatens to petition the state for a psychiatric hold by the end of the day, asserting that every document I presented is legally inadmissible if I lack civil competency. LaDonna's eyes light up with a sudden, desperate hope. She sits up straighter. They think they have found the ultimate override. They think they can simply lock me in a psychiatric ward and proceed with the sale. Maintaining my composure, I anticipate this exact maneuver. I calmly reach into the inner pocket of my suit jacket and pull out a crisp, single sheet of paper. Leaning slightly toward the phone, I introduce myself to the counselor. I suggest he listen very carefully before officially attaching his name to a federal conspiracy. The line goes completely silent. The gears are visibly turning in the lawyer's mind as he realizes the catastrophic legal trap his client has just dragged him into. Letting each word land with precise weight, I inform him that I am holding a certificate of civil competency. It was signed exactly 48 hours ago by a panel of 3 board-certified neurologists at Mercy Medical Hospital. It explicitly overrides any previous or fraudulent medical proxies, classifying me as 100% mentally competent. LaDonna's power of attorney is entirely null and void. Furthermore, I continue smoothly. The forged proxy document and the offshore wire transfer records have already been forwarded to Caleb Penhaligon, the senior trust attorney at the bank. If he continues to represent them in this illicit real estate transaction, he will be actively participating in the unauthorized liquidation of an irrevocable trust. He will be named as a co-conspirator in federal wire fraud. There is no angry retort. There is no brilliant legal comeback. There is only the sound of a man instantly prioritizing his own lucrative legal license over his guilty, desperate client. His voice clipped and highly professional. The lawyer instructs Joel not to call the office again, stating he is no longer representing him. The dial tone echoed loudly. Less than 10 minutes after the lawyer hangs up, the flashing red and blue lights of local law enforcement illuminate the front windows of the mansion. Caleb Penhaligon had filed the injunction and contacted the authorities the moment the open house officially began. LaDonna and Odette are standing in the grand foyer, completely numb, as 2 officers walk through the front door. Standing quietly by the fireplace with my hand resting on Buster's head, I watch as the officers read LaDonna her rights. She is arrested for multiple counts of financial fraud and the deliberate forgery of medical documents. Looking back at me as they place the handcuffs over her wrists, she expects me to intervene. She expects the obedient daughter to step forward and write a check to make the ugly mess disappear. I simply look away. The silence is my final answer. Odette is escorted out right behind her, weeping loudly, suddenly realizing that her life of effortless luxury has evaporated. Joel had managed to slip out the back door during the confusion, attempting to flee the state. But paper trails are faster than sports cars. He was apprehended at the regional airport 3 days later by federal agents, his frozen bank accounts completely useless. 2 months later, the bitter chill of winter has settled over the city of Savannah. But the historic mansion has never felt warmer. The heavy, oppressive atmosphere that LaDonna cultivated for years has been thoroughly scrubbed clean. I did not sell the property. I realized that my grandfather's legacy was not the wood and stone of the house itself. It was the history, the culture, and the community it could foster. Using a portion of the trust's liquid assets, I completely renovated the ground floor, the grand dining room, where LaDonna once threw lavish, elitist parties to mask her empty soul, is now a community archive space. It preserves local history and offers free educational tours to students. The sprawling, perfectly manicured back gardens have been securely fenced in, partnering with a local veterinary charity. I transformed the massive, unused carriage house into a temporary sanctuary for senior rescue dogs. Buster is currently sleeping in a thick, orthopedic velvet bed perfectly positioned in a large bay window, soaking up the bright afternoon sun. His breathing is steady. He does not flinch at loud noises anymore. He does not hide under the antique furniture waiting to be yelled at. He knows he is absolutely safe, walking through the quiet, beautifully restored hallways, listening to the soft classical music playing in the background. I realize I finally feel the exact same way. The heavy chains of obligation have been entirely shattered. The house was finally breathing. It is Christmas evening. Outside, a gentle, shimmering frost coats the grand oak trees lining the long driveway of the estate. Inside, the main dining room is glowing with the warm, amber light of a crackling fire. The long mahogany table is not filled with people who share my DNA. It is filled with people who actually stood by me when I had absolutely nothing to offer them but my gratitude. Meliora is sitting to my right, laughing brightly as she shares a plate of roasted vegetables with Caleb, the stern bank attorney who has surprisingly turned out to have a wonderful, dry sense of humor. 3 of my dedicated physical therapists from the clinic are here, passing around warm spiced cider and swapping stories. Buster is sleeping contentedly under the table, resting his chin on my shoes, occasionally receiving a discreetly dropped piece of turkey. Looking around the table, I feel a profound, overwhelming sense of gratitude. For 28 years, I desperately tried to purchase the love of a mother and a sister who only viewed me as a financial asset to be liquidated. I know their fates now. LaDonna eventually took a federal plea deal to avoid maximum prison time. She is currently working as a janitorial assistant in a state facility to slowly pay off her massive court restitution. Odette's glamorous, internet-famous facade collapsed entirely. She is completely cut off, working a minimum-wage retail job in another state. Joel is currently awaiting federal sentencing for long-term wire fraud. They are living the exact, miserable lives they earned, and I am living the beautiful, quiet life I finally chose. Picking up my glass of sparkling cider, I step away from the table, walking quietly out onto the wraparound porch. The cold night air feels sharp and clean against my skin. Leaning against the wooden railing, I look out over the peaceful, quiet acreage. I survived a horrific crash. I survived a lifetime of emotional manipulation. I survived the ultimate, unforgivable betrayal. But I did not just survive, I successfully protected the truth. I realized that blood relations are simply a biological accident. True family is an intentional, daily choice. It is the people who hold your hand when you are broken, not the people who try to empty your bank accounts when you are unconscious. The greatest wealth is not what you inherit, but what you choose to protect. If you believe that true family is built on respect and loyalty, not just blood, share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Do not forget to subscribe for more stories of justice and healing. Until next time, protect your peace. I finally found my peace.